My name is Mrs. Joyce Bellamy, and I was involved in the park because I worked in the planning section of the old Greater London Council Parks Department at a time when lands was being assembled for the creation of Burgess Park. It was very enjoyable indeed, especially as I had spent my childhood in the wider Peckham area, so I felt an affinity with the area in which I was working.
It's unique. It's like one of London's only modern parks. It was never intended as a park. It used to just be derelict housing and industry. So you'd never get away with building another Burgess Park ever again. Imagine trying to buy up 200 acres of somewhere in London and then demolishing it. You'd never get away with it. The demographic around here is pretty unique. The facilities we have are unique. So it's great that we can actually do quite a modern space. It's continually evolving.
Well, it was hardly a consolidated park. The Greater London Council had inherited from the London County Council a series of bomb sites within the area ultimately designated to become a public park. Burgess Park in the early days was a series of disconnected sites which were grassed over and brought into interim recreational uses.
I learned that everything that's in Burgess Park now used to be houses and factories.
I remember there was lots of local industry. There was R. White's, the lemonade factory, which is along from where Chumley Gardens is now. The Sunpat peanut butter factory in Parkhouse Street. The very big Samuel Jones gummed label factory, which was in Peckham Grove.
Well, it was all houses, wasn't it? It was all houses, and there was all factories. I think there was R. White's factory over the other side of there as well, and there was a Bible factory there as well, and there was, quite a good community over there, really.
Nan used to work in the R. White's factory in Albany Road. She was one of those nans that really a martinet is what you would call her now. She was a very strict nan. I don't really know what her job was, but she would sometimes tell us about the times when she was in there and you'd see the rats running across the rafters. And I said, oh, no, couldn't do that, rats. And she said, you don't worry. She said, sometimes they'd fall in the vats. And I'd say, well, what did you do? Oh, she said, you'd leave them there. And I was like, oh yeah, so I am not going to drink R. White's lemonade. I am not going to drink R. White's lemonade. I'm sorry.
My nan used to work at R. White's Lemonade in Albany Road, where we used to live. I used to go in there and see all the workers and everything, which was good fun.
I can remember the crates of lemonade being stacked up beyond the wall.
Because it was an awful grey, grim-looking building, and I think when they made the Burgess Park, I can remember for a long, long time, but a part of it was still visible, the old wall. And you used to think, God, behind that wall was R. White's Lemonade, and along here was the Albany Tap, where, my father and my uncles used to go and have a beer.
Further along from the footbridge, there was a bookbinder's, which I think wasn't the famous Bible factory. And there was a co-op where you got the sugar from the assistants, put it in a big wooden crate, and they measured it out into blue sugar paper bags. And biscuits didn't come in sealed packets. They were in open tins and weighed out. And there was hardly any car traffic. There was George the coalman, who came once a week, and there was a man who delivered bread on a wicker cart that was quite like a sedan chair, and lemonade was delivered by the Corona lorry because people carried shopping home, and the bottles would have added a lot to the weight of the shopping.
Where there was a parade along here, there was the Woodyard, then there was a shoe mender's, a sweet shop, the co-op, and then back of that was the old Bible factory, and then past that was the Rag and Bone place, and you used to go up there and you got a penny for a jam jar, and they'd get these huge big scales, weighing scales. He'd put bundles of newspaper on the bottom, and depending on the weight, you got so much money. And then he had one of these great big, like a luggage hook now is the only way I would explain it. And he would separate the cottons from the wool, and they would be individually weighed, and then you get money for those.
I know about the industry in current terms is that when we were redeveloping the Burgess Park, we found some diesel tanks, some very large diesel tanks underneath the ground. Those were the vestiges of the kind of dirty industries that they were around there.
It got quite bombed. I mean, where I lived in St George's Way on the corner of East Surrey Grove, and I say the houses in front of us got bombed. East Surrey Grove got bombed. Quite a bad up there it was, you know. And there was quite a lot of damage all around there, really. I mean, you know, it was in and out the shelter after bloody night.
It must have been a wartime thing, but one of the less delightful things that happened along New Church Road was they were animal bones and horns that must have been used for glue, or might have been to do with the whitening factory, which had been further along. So there was this terrible smell, and I think I caught every childhood illness you could catch.
So I will just point out that there are some dings here in the ceramic, especially you see these things here. They were quite possibly caused by shrapnel from the bombs, yeah? This bit particularly looks like shrapnel damage to me.
Burgess Park, it took up a huge amount of old waste ground and a lot of houses. I mean, I know that I don't know what number my gran used to live at, but the house had been hit by a doodlebug. My dad used to tell me the stories about sitting in the trees and watching and listening for the doodlebugs going over. And then one day this doodlebug hit their house. So that was it. And they sort of moved out.
We were aware of raids. There were lots of bomb-damaged houses. There was one in St George's Way that there was only the front left in the terrace. The back of the house just wasn't there. Certainly we played out, and we did play on bomb sites. I think I did stupid things like finding caterpillars and picking the flowers, but I mean the boys played more, they played cowboys and Indians.
It was an adventure. You was doing something different. You was, you know, sort of, say, climbing up. I mean, climb up in the loft and all that sort of thing, and jumping out of windows and all sorts of things. But I mean, today, the health and safety wouldn't let you do it today, would they?
Had to be very careful because walking around on those bomb sites, it could be a bit tricky. Obviously, there was broken masonry and there was wires and there was everything. But I think there was always a sense of excitement that we used to get. You could play tag around some of them. You could run around and play on some of them. But you really had to be very careful because it was quite easy to have accidents there. Again, I don't think you really thought about, you just had your games. I mean, cowboys and Indians we used to play, and goodies and baddies and all that kind of thing. And these were exciting places to play on. Now, when you look back, you think, God, did I really do that? Because, it could have been a bit tricky. But those are the kind of things that we just used to play. It was exciting, and you turn things over and see what you could find. Sometimes you'd find, sad when I think about it now, there'd be broken crockery and stuff like this. And obviously this is where something bad had happened, a bomb had hit, and my brothers used to say to me, maybe we'll find a dead body and things like this. I was like, no. But those are the kind of things we used to do on the bomb site.
You've got to imagine a building that's half up and half down. There's no floorboards, it's just rafters. You'd be climbing up those, up banisters that were falling to pieces and all that. You could take things out of the houses and make things. There was always things in there, pots and pans and tables and all that. And it was just, it's just like an adventure playground.
I think where the adventure playground is now is much better.
The kids' park. That's the favourite part. Yeah, the new kids' park. I take my grandchildren. I have 5. But that is the best part of the park, where the cafes and the play centre and all that, because it has 2 play centres over there, old and the babies as well. And it's got a little pool over there for the kids, which is good.
The reason why Burgess Park was created was that there was a major gap in the metropolitan open space network in that part of London.
I noticed a regeneration, knowing the history of it now, starting in about 1945 when, the site was bombed and the Abercrombie plan said that we want a green lung in this part of London, and eventually it became a park, and there weren't any vestige left of those times when there was industry and residential homes. But the park never really excited me and a lot of people I spoke to, because it was very bitty, it wasn't complete, it didn't have a coherence about it, and it looked as though it was underinvested and underloved, really.
We'd planted some woodland up around New Church Road. Up was the Leprechaun pub. The ground was tough as old boots to get through. You go down with a spade that far, the rest was rubble.
Charlie Richardson had his scrapyard in that area.
There are local gangsters. Were.
Yeah.
I don't think there was a decay as such. I think it was more a case of a process which eventually resulted in getting that money to transform the layout of the park to make it so much more open and accessible. It meant that there could be that big step change in 2010-11, which gives us a park which is a template for an even better park. We see it as a long-term project, and this is only phase 1 of about 3 more phases, where we want to have one of the best inner London parks there is, and that people from all over will come to admire and love it.
The park also absorbed some small historic open spaces in the area, Addington Square Gardens, for instance, and St George's Churchyard being 2. They were amalgamated into the park, is the best way of expressing it. So it was a state of flux in the context of the evolving planning of Greater London.
I think this bit is absolutely exquisite, and I'm glad it survived. And I think where the adventure playground is now is much better, and the BMX park looks utterly amazing. Since the change, there are more facilities in the park, like the sports pitches. It does involve more people, and it is better used.
My favourite thing is the pond, where you can see all the dogs and you can fish and you can have a very relaxing time.
Take the lake away, I wouldn't come over here. I mean, I remember it when it was first dug many years ago. It just was a beautiful place. And it was built for the underprivileged children of Southwark. That's what it was actually built for, by Lady Burgess. She founded the money so that people could fish over the kids and one thing or another. And that's how it started.
Lots of space, lots of fresh air for the children, and I love the way they've done the lakes as well. It's beautiful.
The fact that it's now kind of more accessible to children, there's more going on, there's more interest. My son specifically asked to come here for the last couple of days now, even though we live, near other parks. So we've come out of our way to let him have a run round and use his scooter a bit more.
It's not so dull and dead as like it was before. It's like they've brought life back to the park, that sort of thing.
Well, I'm a local lad as well, so I've lived just off the Walworth Road for the last 9 years, and so it's very much my park as well. When I got the job here, it was very exciting. So I know what the park was like before. I used to come running here, and it didn't feel a particularly safe place. So the transformation, I think, has been amazing. It's much more open, it's much more safe, big clear lines. Facilities have improved, there's so much more planting and interest in, and you can see it, just the sheer numbers of people in the park now, and the diversity of people in the park. It's great, really exciting.
Burgess Park fits in the strategic open space network of London, which includes other major parks like Battersea Park and so on, and other parks at a slightly lower level like Southwark Park. They all interplay with each other. And of course, when you have, say, a football match, teams from who are based at different parks play against each other. So the catchment is probably far wider than we appreciate when you take things like visiting sports teams or people having a day out as opposed to a couple of hours out are taken into account.
I suppose to a level they've updated it. They've updated it and brought better things to the community.
It is special because it was a vision emerging from the ashes of World War II.